Okay, hi everybody. I have a special treat for you today. This is Dr. Sis. I've already,
Hello.
I've already told them about my little sister, the doctor, so they have that background. But can you just introduce yourself to our class?
For sure. My name is Jessica. You can also call me Dr. Sis. I live in Vancouver. I have a PhD in cognitive neuroscience that I got from the Department of Psychology at the University of Toronto in 2016. And right now I manage research and evaluation at Science World, which is the science center in Vancouver.
Awesome. And I don't know if I've ever really asked you this, but when you were a little kid, what did you want to be?
I think you knew that I wanted to be a waitress. Um, I don't know why. That was a really intriguing profession for me. But actually, I think growing up, I had no idea. I definitely didn't know that I wanted to do cognitive neuroscience or ever thought about working in a science center. Um, yeah, so I kind of stumbled into it, as
And
so many of us have.
what made you stumble into it? Like, at what point did you decide to pursue further education?
I've always loved school, as you probably know. So it was never really a question of whether I wanted to do school. It was what I wanted to do in school. Um, and then I've always been super curious. So when I found psychology, like I took a really general first year undergrad, and one of those courses was psychology. And I was just like, oh, this is great. I love learning about people. And then it wasn't until my third year of undergrad that I took I think it was cognitive psychology, was just what it was called. Um, just a course with a great professor who we talked a lot about the brain. Um, and so that's when it kind of sunk in for me that, like, yeah, of all the cool things to study in the world, brains are the coolest, in my opinion. So that's kind of what led me down that path.
I should have asked you to wear your brain hat for this interview.
My stethoscope.
Oh,
So much.
yeah, next time.
Well, next time.
And did you work with that professor again throughout grad school or no?
No, I took two classes with her. Um, and then she actually, I worked with like a prof that she worked with, but she moved shortly after I took the classes with her. Um, so, yeah,
Chased her right away,
yeah, exactly.
eh? Okay. And so, what would you say is the importance of research and policy?
Um, those are both hugely important things to me. I should have also mentioned, so for the last 5 years, I have been a volunteer with the Canadian Science Policy Conference. So I'm a big fan of science policy and of using science and evidence and research in policy. For me, it comes down to just being efficient. Like there's so much science and research that happens. Um, and it's a shame if we don't use it. People put so much work into it. We spend so much money and time doing it. And so we should use it. And really, if you're not, if you're not making policy decisions based on evidence, then that leads down some pretty bad roads. Um, yeah, so for me, it's just about using what we've got, and that's why science communication is really important for me. I love working in the realm of public science because I think that the reason we don't see more evidence-informed decision making is because research usually is really inaccessible to most people, especially policymakers and decision makers.
So, when you say policy, is that laws and things that go into, for our folks, maybe preserving forests or beneficial species and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, policy, yeah, it's a pretty broad term. I often think about it at the government level, whether it's municipal, provincial, federal. Um, but there's also policies like there's policies within organizations, And so policy can be applied at a lot of levels, but I think at its core, it should still be informed by evidence whenever possible.
Absolutely. Okay. And you brought up communication. So that can so often be a barrier where you have really, really great research, but because it's not communicated properly, either the funding dries up or the policy doesn't get put in place. So can you speak a little bit to the importance of communication and effective communication of these really scientific principles?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more attention being paid to this now, and I think there's a lot of really great resources. And I'm not a science communication expert. I am an enthusiast. I'm really enthusiastic about it, and I think that that's the biggest piece of it. You know, if you're enthusiastic about the research that you're doing, or whatever like education you're involved in, that's the best way, I think, that's a great place to start when it comes to communication. Um, and just having, yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know what else
That's okay.
to say about that. There's a lot that I think can be said, but I would recommend sort of checking out other, there's like so many great resources when it comes to communicating science. And I think it can be done in a lot of different levels, but certainly within like college and university courses, there's a great opportunity, I think, to learn and explore.
Absolutely. And so when we are communicating these things, how often are you communicating with policymakers versus the general public, or other academics versus the general public? And is there a difference in the way you communicate between those groups?
Yeah, there's definitely a difference. I think the biggest thing when it comes to science communication is know your audience. So personally, when I communicate science right now, it's to the general public because I work with the public at a science center. And I work a lot with my staff, like internally, just to help them better understand. So my background is in evaluation, and so helping them understand, who comes to the science center and why do they come and do they learn anything and those sorts of things. Um, and so yeah, my approach when it comes to chatting with staff is very different than it would be with the public. But it's our sort of guiding principle is always just meet people where they're at. One of the fun things that I liked to do when I was in grad school was to sort of challenge myself to um, be able to talk about my research and what I did at various levels. So starting at like the most basic level for somebody who might not even be involved in research, I would say something like, I study human memory and language, and that would be like a really easy access point for anybody, pretty much. If they wanted to know more, to dig a little deeper, and then you could kind of build levels on that. So from there, I would say, if someone wanted to know more, or if they had a bit more understanding of like the field that I was in, I would say something like, I study the brain using functional MRI to understand language patterns. And then just kind of going deeper and deeper to something that was like very technical, like I use multivoxel pattern analysis to understand the neural correlates of inner speech and how they compare with speech production and speech perception, which is like imperceptible to most people. But to some people, that means something. And so, yeah, it's all about knowing your audience and just getting really comfortable with being, with changing your language to meet people where they are.
That makes a lot of sense. And it explains so much, because I remember when you were doing this research, I would ask you, like, why? Well, why? And then you'd get to the advanced level, and I'd be like, okay.
Please stop.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's enough. My brain is broken. So
Yeah.
I think that the element of challenging yourself, especially when it comes to communication, is so important. And you told me a little bit about a very high pressure presentation that you did while you were in school. Can you share that with the students?
Sure. So when I was in my third year of undergrad, I took a course. I don't remember what the course was.
How many years were you in university total?
Total, it was, I guess, 10.
Yeah, okay, so it's fair.
Yeah. I took a lot of courses. It was a psychology course, if that narrows it down at all. But I remember the professor, who was a guy named Ashley Monks. He's a wonderful prof. And he challenged us to do a poster presentation on a topic, presumably of our choice, related to the course content. And so that's I didn't do that in undergrad. I'd never had to like present in undergrad. That's a big thing, especially about something that I didn't really know much about, but I had to suddenly become an expert in, and like make this nice-ish looking poster. And so, yeah, I dug into some research. I found something that I really thought was intriguing, put together a poster, and then along with the rest of my class, we like walked around and watched each other present this research that we had all just learned. And so it was really like at the time, I'd never really done those sorts of presentations. I'm not the most comfortable public speaking, but I've gotten a lot more comfortable. So it was very like different for me. I wouldn't say it was terribly high stakes, other than like the stakes I put on myself. So it was very nerve-wracking, but this many years later, I don't remember the course. I don't remember much of the content, but I remember that experience because it was something that you have to do in grad school. And so it was really nice to kind of be pushed a little bit outside of my comfort zone, to be able to have a little bit of agency too in what you're learning about, dive deep into something that's interesting to you and then to share it with people. So it was a really fun learning experience, even though at the time I was probably like not loving it.
It's funny how things change in our perspective when we look back, eh?
Absolutely.
Okay, so poster presentation. What's that all about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you go to like any conferences, or if you do grad school, like conferences are a cornerstone of grad school, at least in psychology, I think in a lot of fields. And poster presentations are a big part of most conferences. So they're a really easy sort of entryway for folks who don't have like a big program of research, or if they just have like some small finding to share with anyone else who's interested in their research. So it can be really awkward. Like it's usually just this giant room full of people standing beside their posters, hoping that someone comes by and they can talk to them about them. But it's also a lot of fun because it's all people who are really invested in the work that they're doing. And you don't often get a chance, I think, to really talk to people about the research that you're doing, especially people who choose to come and listen to your research. So poster presentations are a lot of fun. They can be pretty nerve-wracking too. But everyone's experience with them is different. I'm sure there's some people who don't worry about them at all, and there's some people who probably worry about them a lot more. I probably have done maybe 15 or so throughout my 5 years of grad school, which doesn't sound like a lot, but you kind of get the hang of it after 15. And I've done a lot of different, like some of them were like big international conferences, and some were just like departmental kind of fun things at U of T. So there's a big spectrum there.
Mm-hmm. And you attend a lot of conferences now through your job. Are you still absorbing poster presentations or doing any now, or yeah?
Yeah, so I haven't done any in a while actually, but there are still poster presentations in the conferences that I go to. So I don't go to academic conferences anymore, but like science center conferences, which are the best conferences in the world, by the way. They're just as much fun as you'd think they'd be. But they do have posters there, so it's not just an academic conference sort of relic. And I still really I really enjoy them. It's such like I said, a great opportunity to talk to people one-on-one, and just understand, what's going on, and you don't have the time lag that it takes to do to like communicate published research, because that, publishing studies takes a long time. So with posters, it can be stuff that's ongoing or that they just did, but they haven't published yet. And so it's a really a great way to keep up with like what's going on right now in the research world, or in whatever world you're in.
Yeah. And is it usually one poster to go with one research project, or will you have multiple research projects communicated in one poster?
Usually it's one project per poster. But there's a lot of, there's not a lot of rules when it comes to poster presentations. I've seen some people set up like one poster on their right and one poster on their left and try and deliver like both of them. Yeah, there's a lot of wackiness that goes on, but usually it's just one, it's a big poster, a few feet tall and wide. And it'll have like all of those same elements, like the background, the methods, the results, the conclusions, sorts of things.
And now that we're on to the elements, are there more visual elements to the poster, or are you just trying to have the meat and potatoes of the research?
So it depends a lot on the setting. So again, know your audience. If it's a presentation where you're going to be at your poster for most of the time that the poster is going to be on display, then I would recommend that you don't have to have so much detail. Like it should not just be a brick of text regardless of the setting. But if you're going to be standing there talking to people the whole time, you can really make it very visual. On the other hand, if it's going to be sort of set up on display, throughout the whole day, and maybe you'll only be there for an hour, or maybe you won't be there at all, there's a lot of different ways it can work. But if you're not going to be there to talk about the research, then you want to make the material on the poster a lot more detailed. But the challenge with posters is definitely not putting too much in there, because it can be really easy to just sort of copy and paste. But it's kind of awkward to like stand and read a poster for 10 minutes. That's not really the goal of it. So my advice is that less is more when it comes to posters.
Okay. Keep it simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think as our resident poster expert, what would you say your top piece of advice, basically culminating everything that you've just told us about how to do an effective poster? What is the most important thing?
I would say it's know your audience. Just really try to think through, put yourself in their perspective, and what do they want to see? What's their motivation for reading it? What's their background coming into it? Like, make it accessible. That doesn't necessarily mean like dumbing it down, but just avoiding jargon, and explaining, like, don't use a bunch of acronyms if you haven't spelled out those acronyms. So just know your audience, know why they might be coming to your poster or trying to absorb this information. Give them enough, like don't make them read the entire thing to figure out what you found or what the results are. Like, you just give it to them, and give them something, like offer them somewhere further to go. So give them a link to more research or to more of your own resources. Give them a business card, give them something, some way to keep that conversation going. That's always a big hit for me.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So sorry, I know that was not one piece of advice. A lot of pieces of advice.
That's all right. It's very helpful.
Good.
Okay, is there anything else that you think first-time poster makers should know?
There's a ton of templates. Like, you do not have to start from scratch. If Fleming doesn't have like a standard template, or your like program doesn't have a template, like PowerPoint has templates. There's also lots of fun like infographic type resources that you can check out on the internet. So like PictoChart is one that I've used. Uh, there's a bunch of other ones, but their names are not coming to me. But yeah, you definitely don't have to start from scratch. Use a template, but then from there, like make it your own, have fun with it. Uh, yeah, it's a cool thing. So enjoy it.
That's perfect advice. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So for all the students who know me and what a nerd I am, now they can see that it totally runs in the family, and we may not be nerds about the same thing, but we are total nerds.
Totally. Yeah, family functions are the best functions.
Especially when you study brains, eh?
Exactly.
Okay, well, thanks, Dr. Sis.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Good luck.